The late summer light washed through Maggie Sullivan's cramped Vermont apartment, as if trying to reveal everything she'd spent 3 years hiding. Heartache, regret, and the loneliness that crept in after a painful divorce. Boxes were stacked everywhere, half-packed, half-forgotten, echoing the same unresolved tension sitting between her and her 17-year-old daughter, Emma, who moved around the room with surgical precision. Every movement from Emma felt like a reminder of the things Maggie couldn't fix. When the mailbox clattered outside, Maggie welcomed the interruption, stepping out into the warm air and returning with a stack of bills, until she noticed a heavy cream envelope addressed to her in elegant script. Inside, a lawyer informed her that her estranged uncle, a man never spoken of since her early 20s, had died and left her his entire estate. Confusion clashed with curiosity, and for the first time in months, Emma's eyes softened with interest. They drove to New Hampshire the next morning, winding through towering pines toward a secluded farmhouse that seemed untouched by time. Its interior felt like a portal into another life, warm wood, antique rugs, and memories she never had the chance to make. Then the lawyer unlocked a converted barn, and Maggie stepped into a world she never knew existed. Towering shelves of ancient artifacts, manuscripts glowing under soft light, pottery older than cities, and coins from civilizations that once seemed only theoretical. In a single breathtaking moment, the weight of her past collided with an inheritance that promised to reshape her entire future. As Maggie walked deeper into the research building, she felt as though she were stepping into the private universe of a man she had been taught to forget. Her uncle's meticulous notes, delicate sketches, and decades of global correspondence revealed a mind far more brilliant and far more misunderstood than her mother ever allowed her to believe. Emma, usually cautious and distant, transformed in that space. Her eyes widened at ancient manuscripts, her fingers hovered over carved relics, her voice softening with awe. The lawyer revealed the collection's estimated worth. Nearly $25 million. The number hit Maggie like a physical force. For a woman who counted every grocery dollar and whose daughter's college expenses loomed impossibly large, the room vibrated with possibility. But before she could fully absorb the enormity of the discovery, the lawyer handed her a sealed letter from her uncle, written in elegant penmanship. In it, he expressed a lifetime of unspoken pride in her resilience and devotion, urging her to protect the collection and use it to expand human understanding. The words felt like a bridge between the life she had endured and the life she never realized she deserved. As she lowered the letter, Emma looked at her with a mixture of pride and uncertainty, emotion that had been missing for years. Maggie knew in that instant the inheritance wasn't just money or history. It was a second chance, a doorway to healing, purpose, and a future that neither of them could yet imagine. The farmhouse quickly became a refuge, part sanctuary, part puzzle waiting to be solved. Maggie and Emma moved in with only the essentials, and for the first time in years, silence between them didn't feel like punishment but possibility. Emma devoured her uncle's journals, cataloging artifacts with the diligence of a born scholar, while Maggie immersed herself in letters exchanged between her uncle and researchers across continents. Days stretched into nights filled with discovery, shared excitement, and slowly rebuilding trust. Then came the first fracture. A sleek black Mercedes crept up the driveway, and a sharply dressed collector, Victoria Kane, stepped out with a smile polished enough to hide a razor's edge. She offered $3 million for the entire collection, no conditions, immediate payment. Her tone was laced with subtle insults, questioning Maggie's ability to maintain the artifacts, dismissing her as a small-town librarian playing curator. Anger Maggie hadn't felt in years rose like a flame. She refused. Victoria's smile thinned. She warned Maggie about the dangers of isolated women protecting priceless treasures. When she left, the air felt colder. Doubt simmered between Maggie and Emma that night, leading to their first real argument in months. Emma wondered aloud whether selling was the sensible choice, while Maggie clung fiercely to the responsibility her uncle's words had placed in her hands. Neither realized that the real threat was only beginning, and that the farmhouse doors, no matter how solid, would not be enough to keep danger out. 3 days later, the breakthrough came not from fear but curiosity. While adjusting a spotlight inside the secret room, Maggie noticed the shadows forming a faint outline across the back wall, too symmetrical to be accidental. She pressed her hand against the panel, and a concealed door eased open, revealing another chamber. Inside were decades of meticulously organized documents, acquisition papers, photographs, authentication records, and financial statements proving the collection was worth far more than anyone realized. But the most important discovery lay in a set of leather-bound folders, her uncle's blueprint for a research institute he had dreamed of establishing. He had already arranged the legal framework and funding. All he needed was a successor with courage. Emma, reading over her shoulder, saw more than paperwork. She saw purpose. Her earlier doubts vanished, replaced by a fire Maggie hadn't seen since Emma was a child. Together, they decided to bring the institute to life. With the lawyer's help, they contacted scholars, drafted plans, and prepared to announce the project publicly. But Victoria returned, this time with two men who scrutinized the farmhouse like predators. Her tone dropped all pretense. The collection was too valuable, too exposed, and Maggie too inexperienced to control it. She suggested accidents might happen out here in the woods. Fear gripped Maggie, but resolve held her upright. She called the police, notified the lawyer, and for the first time, truly understood what it meant to protect something not just valuable, but sacred. Emma's brilliant idea came at midnight while they sat tense and sleepless in the farmhouse kitchen. Go public, expose everything, make the world your shield. It was the kind of strategic courage Maggie had never associated with her daughter, but in that moment, she saw a young woman ready to fight for something larger than both of them. With help from Dartmouth scholars, they organized a press conference revealing the discovery, the Institute's mission, and their commitment to preserving the collection. The media descended on the farmhouse like a storm of cameras and notebooks. Headlines spread across New England. Unknown scholar's secret collection worth millions. Small-town mother inherits global legacy. Historic institute planned in White Mountains. The publicity worked. Their once-isolated property became a protected academic site. But Victoria made one final attempt. She returned with a larger group, intending to break into the research building. What she didn't know was that FBI agents specializing in art crimes were already stationed nearby at the lawyer's request. The moment her men touched the door, agents swarmed, and Victoria's years-long ring of forgery, theft, and illegal trafficking unraveled. Her arrest became national news, turning her into a cautionary tale and Maggie and Emma into symbols of integrity. For the first time since inheriting the farmhouse, Maggie felt the weight on her chest begin to lift. The danger had passed, but the mission had only just begun. By autumn, the Whitmore Research Institute was more than an idea. It was a living, breathing center of discovery. Renovations expanded the research building. Scholars arrived from universities across the country, and artifact cases gleamed under museum-grade lighting. Emma, once uncertain about her future, moved with confidence through the aisles of ancient knowledge, guiding graduate students and managing catalog systems she had built herself. Maggie discovered her own power too, navigating academic partnerships, leading meetings, and finding joy in the leadership she'd never believed she could offer. Dartmouth, Yale, and Boston museums requested research collaborations, and the first major publication validating Edmund's theories was already underway. Even Maggie's personal life blossomed. Tom Mitchell, the lawyer who had first delivered the inheritance letter, became a steady presence. Professional conversations slowly shifted into shared dinners, warm laughter, and evenings walking the meadow under starlight. Emma noticed before Maggie did. The farmhouse no longer echoed with loss but hummed with new beginnings. Meanwhile, Maggie's ex-husband tried to reassert control when Emma decided to defer college, but Emma, strengthened by purpose, stood firm, claiming her independence. Maggie watched her daughter grow into the woman she had always hoped she would become, confident, capable, intellectually alive. Their relationship deepened as the Institute thrived, built on the foundation of a family legacy once buried by silence. For the first time in years, Maggie wasn't surviving. She was building something enduring, something that felt like destiny. The years that followed unfolded with a momentum Maggie could never have predicted. The Institute became a landmark in the academic world, drawing researchers from multiple continents. Their annual symposium brought together experts in ancient trade, astronomy, anthropology, and early engineering. Emma pursued her degree while continuing to serve as assistant director, eventually earning a coveted place in Harvard's archaeology PhD program. Maggie and Tom married in a small ceremony behind the farmhouse, surrounded by colleagues who had become like family. Every corner of the property echoed with the life and purpose her uncle had envisioned, but never lived to see. Scholarly breakthroughs emerged from the Institute's archives. evidence of ancient cultural exchanges that challenged long-accepted academic models, astronomical instruments that suggested cross-continental knowledge transmission, and manuscripts revealing forgotten histories. Each discovery felt like a quiet conversation with Edmund, as though his presence lingered in the warm creak of the farmhouse floors and the soft glow of the research lights at dusk. Maggie often found herself in his study, writing nightly reflections in a journal, notes of gratitude, surprises, and small moments that reminded her what life could become when fear no longer dictated the future. When she walked across the meadow at sunset, watching researchers pore over artifacts in the building her uncle once tended alone, she felt the extraordinary truth settling deeper into her heart. She had not just inherited a collection. She had inherited a calling, and she had risen to meet it. 2 years after she first held her uncle's letter, Maggie stood at a podium in Dartmouth's largest auditorium, delivering a keynote address to scholars, students, and journalists from around the world. Her voice carried confidence she had earned through fire, doubt, and rediscovery. She spoke of her uncle's vision, of humanity's ancient connections, of knowledge that transcended borders, echoing the same values he had spent his life documenting. Emma sat proudly in the front row beside Tom, her Harvard ID hanging from her lanyard, radiating the certainty of a woman who had rewritten her own future. As Maggie finished her speech, the audience rose in a standing ovation that washed over her like a tide. In that moment, she finally understood the depth of her uncle's final gift. He hadn't left her wealth, he had left her meaning. He had shown her that reinvention is timeless, that purpose can surface from the ashes of heartache, and that even the most fractured family histories can lead to profound transformation. When Maggie stepped away from the podium, she felt Edmund's presence as clearly as the applause. She knew now that the journey he started was not ending with her. It was expanding, branching, inspiring. Because the greatest inheritance is not made of artifacts or money, but of faith. Faith that a person can rise, rebuild, and bring light into places where darkness once lived. And as the auditorium quieted, one truth rang louder than applause. It is never too late for a new beginning. If you were Maggie, would you